there's no reason why we can't have people return to the moon in 15 years about, and human explorers, not tourists, but explorers, going to Mars, but only if we as a nation make a commitment that when we go to Mars, we're going to go there and not just do it 2 or 3 times and then stop, but we're going to go to Mars and have a gradual buildup of a permanent presence of a settlement on Mars.
Let's talk about the last 30 years in the future of space also. I think it's most people's, the general public's imagination or mindset that the landing on the moon in 1969 was pretty much the epitome of the space program, and there hasn't been that much that's been notable since then. How do you dissuade them of that?
Well, it certainly was the objective that we set forth. There was a competitiveness that started even before Sputnik. After Sputnik in 1957, it was greatly magnified. And then it became clear that we were being challenged in achievements in the technology of rocketry and spaceflight by the Soviets. But for the public at large, there was a significant distraction by the events going on in Southeast Asia and the differences of opinion of people about the appropriateness of the government's actions. And few people want to remember it, but I will remind them that right after we got out of quarantine, one of our first appearances was to receive the Pierre Marquette Discovery Medal at Marquette in Wisconsin, I think it was. And when we were there were students demonstrating, and they chose that opportunity to throw eggs at us, having just come back from the moon. Now that sounds like a very inappropriate thing, but that was the sense of what was going on during those times. There was a great division. As I see the transportation that's needed in the future, there are 2 major pillars, 2 things that need to be developed. One of them is this shuttle-derived large volume that also, when we're not interested in a volume, then we have heavy payloads that we can't launch with any of the expendable rockets of today. We need a much heavier rocket to send the cargo to the moon or the cargo to Mars or some of the Air Force orbital space-based lasers or whatever they are. But we also need that same rocket to put up the volume that is existing in the tanks that go into orbit. So that's one pillar of the space transportation. And the other one is not high performance, but it is 2-stage to orbit. A progression of these 2-stage to orbit. We need a small, a medium, and a large. Here is an example of what I've been working on, which represents the medium-sized reusable booster and upper stages. What is unique about our selection of this is that just like the jet airplanes of the early 50s, where the tail section would come off and you could take the jet engine out and put a new one in, an overhauled one in, put the airplane back together and fly it. Why? Because the jet engines were not reliable as they should be. They're much more reliable today. Rocket engines of today are not as reliable as they should be. Therefore, what we've done is to have the rocket separate from the airframe. This is an Atlas III rocket, very lightweight, thin-skinned, and it's got a new Russian engine in it. So we put that in 2 airplanes. This is a dual booster, which increases the payload. We could use one of these with the smaller rocket, or 2 of these with the smaller rocket, or this one can put about 6 tons into orbit. And of course, the booster separates, and it's unmanned, of course. This is just a booster, and these are existing solid rockets and Centaur rockets and payload fairings. But this can put about 6 tons to geosynchronous transfer orbit, which is a very, very admirable payload. We have a bigger rocket that could be used in the middle of this. And eventually, what we can do is to have boosters fly with an orbiter. Now that orbiter, in our way of thinking, should have hydrogen on the outside. This is a kerosene rocket in the booster, but it's a hydrogen rocket in the orbiter, the same shape, but the hydrogen is outside and the oxygen is inside. So this separates at about Mach 5 or 6, and unmanned comes back with jet engines, flies back and lands, and this, of course, goes into orbit. It's about half the size of the present orbiter, and it delivers only crew to orbit. And of course, an interesting feature is that it has a crew module that separates so that the crew can be safely aborted from this at any time during the rocket launch.
Implicit in all of this, though, is that NASA really can't do this. It has to be done through private industry now, and that's where the rub always comes in.
It would be wonderful if NASA didn't have to do this, if private industry could do this and we could just say they will do it. The fact of the matter is they won't do it because there's not the payoff return. It has to be government pioneered in the development of it. We've learned that now when the single stage X-33 has been canceled, that there just is no way that industry is going to be able to get the investment money from Wall Street to do this. We will need to upgrade the present shuttle in a gradual evolutionary fashion and eventually have a larger version of this booster. This is a medium booster. A larger version of this would replace the solid rocket boosters on the shuttle. And that larger version, using 2 of them on the present shuttle, would then use 1 booster with the orbiter, and that would replace the crew and cargo capacity of the present orbiter. And the civil version of that could now have crew and passengers, 60, 80, maybe 100, some number like that allows an economical business to be made of the civil versions of what NASA needs to replace its present shuttle. So there's a partnership needed in the development of a government need that also has spin-offs.
The question is, though, this will still take tens of billions of dollars of public money, and you have people who are screaming for more money for education, for the military, for military salaries, for 8 million different reasons. Why is space travel, space exploration so important to the public good that tens of billions of dollars spent on this is more valuable than tens of billions of dollars spent on education or health?
There will always be the arguments that we could, instead of spending this on space, which we don't need, we could spend it back here. The fact of the matter is that the military does need to upgrade the ability to secure our assets in space. The U.S. has more satellites, and we have become more dependent upon satellites for our security, our communication, worldwide security. Those assets need to be protected. We need to have an active upgrading of the next generation system of rockets. Otherwise, we will not be competitive in the world. Now, the Chinese rockets are getting better and better, and of course the Russian rockets are very good, and they're based on a system that can reduce the cost down below what we could do. So we need to be competitive in that market. And I think we also deserve to the young people of our country to be leaders in the world of exploration in space. There's no reason why we can't have people return to the moon in 15 years about, and human explorers, not tourists, but explorers, going to Mars, but only if we as a nation make a commitment that when we go to Mars, we're going to go there and not just do it 2 or 3 times and then stop, but we're going to go to Mars and have a gradual buildup of a permanent presence of a settlement on Mars. Sooner or later, a responsible civilization owes it to future generations to ensure the survival of humanity here on Earth. And you can never tell when something might come from outer space that we can't react against to prevent from a catastrophe happening here on Earth that could conceivably wipe out the human race unless we have a growing settlement somewhere. Now, whether that should be done by 2025 or 2050 or 2100 or 2200 or just when it should be, I think it is a growing realization that things can happen in this universe of ours that we don't have any control over. Whether we know whether there's life somewhere else or not, we owe it to our civilization to ensure its survival.